Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for Texas Insider. I'm Jim Cardle. We're pleased to be able to visit today with Senator Dan Patrick from Senate District 7 down outside of Houston. In Houston. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here, thank you.
There's been another special subcommittee named this week over in the Senate. The Senate Finance Committee now has the Fiscal Matters Subcommittee. Senator, you're a member of it. I know you're trying to do your best, as is the entire legislature, to come up with some solutions, and it's not an easy process. Tell us what you're working on.
No, I'm on Finance, the Subcommittee for Education Finance, and now on the Subcommittee of Fiscal Matters. So I spend all my day looking at areas where we can cut spending, but also how we can prioritize our spending.
Mm-hmm.
We had a press conference this week with several senators who want to get a clear message that conservatives can govern within the fiscal constraints of the money available, but do the right thing. And so what we said in our press conference was, we're going to balance the budget without any new taxes or broad-based fees. We're going to live within our means. That's what people sent us here in November to do. But we're going to prioritize the classroom, because I hear from my voters, and I come from a very conservative district, I hear from my voters, Dan, I want you to cut spending, but we don't want the Republicans to undermine education. We're not going to do that. So what we're doing is moving money, shifting money, prioritizing money, cutting taxes, cutting the budget, but prioritizing the classroom.
Well, let's talk about the prioritization for a minute, because you're right. There was a mood in November. Clearly, people are minding their own pocketbook.
Right.
They're expecting, most would think, although you all are being criticized for not rearranging or not prioritizing, and in fact going with the current services into the future. Talk about prioritizing. I know you've got a mandates bill to help prioritize education. Talk about that current spending.
Sure. Right now we are $9.7 billion less than what we spent on education in 2010 and 11, this current budget, and accounting for growth,
which is about 38 billion in education minus.
So it's a significant amount of funds that we do not have based on the current budget and future needs. And where that 9.7 comes from, very quickly, because people say, wait, the economy is great in Texas, why are we short? First of all, no other state in the country, and Texas never in its history has experienced what we're experiencing. And you know what that is? We have a downturn in the economy because of what's happened in Washington, not Texas. Texas is stronger than anyone else, but we've been affected.
There's a fear sweeping the nation.
So our sales tax revenues are down. Everyone knows that home prices have flattened out and are down, foreclosures, so our property values are down. But guess what? The last time this happened in the mid-'80s, everyone left. The snowbirds went home. We're adding 1,200 people a day to Texas because the other 49 states are in worse shape.
And we're the shining star.
We're the shining star. So they're coming here. So we have this combination of a downturn in the economy and an uptick in the population. We're going to add 160,000 more students in our next 2-year budget cycle at a cost of about $4.5 billion just for new students. Then if you look
So you've got the population increase forcing your pressure on government needs.
And then you have the pressure on our Medicaid rolls, because we have people coming in here. Many of them are going on Medicaid. 60% of the new students who are coming to Texas are estimated to be economically disadvantaged. They cost more to educate. So Texas is in a unique position. We are the shining star. But we have pressure on from the top side of growth, and then we have pressure on our downturn in property taxes and sales tax. Because if you look at education, a school district, half their money comes from their local property tax.
Okay.
So think of it as a seesaw. As property tax values go up, as they had for the last 10 years, the state funding goes down.
Which is the second component of the ISD.
As property taxes go down, state funding goes up, except our state funding is down too. So both sides of the seesaw are down.
So there's no balance.
There's no balance.
Thus your pressure.
That's where the pressure comes from. So if you look at that 9.7 in education that we do not have to spend, about 3.2 of that was stimulus, one-time spending.
From the Obama
stimulus plan that went directly to schools. But unfortunately, a lot of the school districts hired people with it. So a lot of the people that will be laid off are going to be people that were hired They shouldn't have been, because it was one-time money. Should have been to buy things or to fix things or repair things, not to hire people. Then you have the component of growth, which is about $2.5 billion.
Okay.
Then you have the component of us replacing that part of the seesaw, property taxes that are down, and it adds up to $9.7 billion. So what we did in finance today on our education subcommittee, we are shifting $6 billion in the budget to education. So to close that gap from 9.7 to about $4 billion. So we'll be cutting education by $4 billion. We'll be cutting health care by about $4 or $5 billion. So at the end of this session, the conservatives will have cut the budget, as people ask us, probably by $7 to $10 billion. That is a significant cut. We're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to have broad-based fees. I'm not voting for them. But we're going to prioritize education. And I think that's what the people want us to do.
Well, I should mention you were the founder and chairman or president, if it's called one of those, of the Tea Party Caucus.
Yes.
And there are that whole movement about the prioritization.
Prioritization. You know, we do three things in government. We educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate.
Oh, that's good.
That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to be sure that we have
education, health care, and prisons.
That's what
and
we do.
Losing the mail if you throw in the federal government.
Right.
So, okay.
And last, to put this in perspective, the last budget cycle in state dollars, we had about $89 billion when you put it all together. This session, we're going to have $77 to $80 billion. So that's
per year.
No, that's for the 2 years.
Okay.
That's the state dollars. You add federal dollars onto that.
Okay.
So that's your 9 to 10. So 89 to, let's just call it 79 or 80. We allocated $38 billion for education today. So we have 38.
Which is about what it was last time.
Is about what it was last time.
Excellent.
The $4 billion we're cutting is so that we can pay for that property tax decline and we can pay for growth. Now the next piece of the puzzle will be to fund our Medicaid rolls, which are growing, and health care for the most needy, and then we'll fund public safety. We'll probably, if you add those three sectors together, is around $65 billion. So we'll spend 65. We have about 77 to 80 to spend, and the rest will be for everything else. And that's not a lot for everything else, but that's why we have to cut the budget. We're not broke. We have lots of money. We're going to have a huge budget because we're the second largest state. We have plenty of money to take care of four groups of people: our seniors who are in need, who have no family to take care of them; our children, because children should not be held responsible because they have irresponsible or idiotic parents, and sadly many do. Take care of our veterans when they come home, whether they're mentally or physically wounded, and take care of the disabled. My philosophy is, if you're not one of those four groups, get off your butt, get an education, and get a job, and don't expect the taxpayers to pick up your tab for life. We have plenty of money to take care of the people who we should take care of. It's really simple, and that's what we're going to do.
Let's drill down on education a little bit, because there's been in front of the Capitol the teachers groups, the administrator groups, and I know that's
We've heard from them all.
Part of what you're hearing.
Right.
But what can you tell us? Is there going to be any effort? Senator Shapiro, I think, said something the other day to help local school districts decide, or how do you attack getting as many dollars into the classroom as possible?
Well, it's interesting. We have a press conference yesterday where 7 conservative senators stand up and say we're going to prioritize education, live within our means, not raise taxes, balance the budget.
Okay.
And we get criticism today from some superintendents and school board members around the state because I had the audacity to say, and several other senators said, we're going to prioritize education, but we're going to prioritize the classroom. It's up to the school district to prioritize the classroom. The teacher should be the last person fired, not the first person fired. And there are going to be layoffs because we're cutting it by $4 billion.
Clearly, yeah.
But whether you can argue 40% of staffing is non-teachers or 50%, depending on how you want to move the numbers, clearly nearly half of all personnel in school districts are not in the classroom.
And that's been in the news a lot lately,
Right.
the one-to-one teacher to student to administrator personnel.
And so what I said in the press conference was the school districts have to do their best not to cut the classroom.
And what do you know about I think the numbers are that the population and student growth is up about 17%, but yet the school administrator
is up about 20, about 28%. And look, we need someone to drive the bus. We need someone to work in the cafeteria. We have to have a nurse, we have to have a librarian, and we have to have some teacher support.
Sounds like a traditional education you're talking about.
What do we need? We have 200 and some districts with their own police force. Do we need a police force with 200 school districts? We have school districts that spend combined $1 billion. Now, $1 billion at 50,000 apiece is 20,000 teacher jobs. They spend $1 billion across the state on curriculum. Why are they doing curriculum? That's what we do here in the state.
So I would guess unless you're Houston and maybe Dallas, you don't need 20,000. That the numbers just can't support those superintendents coming to you saying and being critical of what you did yesterday.
Yeah, so they felt in some way that the legislature, it's amazing, and I know everyone is kind of stressed. You know, folks watching this, they're stressed about their job, they're stressed about the economy, they're stressed about the Obama administration.
Well, folks are on pins and needles at the Capitol every day.
Everybody's stressed. So I understand the superintendents are under great pressure. We're not blaming the district, but what we're saying is we're going to be responsible. We're going to prioritize education, but you cannot spend the dollars like you used to spend. You just can't ramp up the non-classroom personnel, and they need to be the first to go.
And the Tea Party and the grassroots, are you still hearing from those folks that is what they're wanting you to do? Make the tough decisions, because that's the hard part.
They want us to make the tough decisions, and make no mistake. In this
you all ran on making tough decisions. Are you going to be able to deliver?
Absolutely. We are going to cut the budget somewhere between 10, 9, 11 billion dollars when it's all said and done.
Okay.
That's a huge cut. We're not going to raise taxes, but we're going to fund public safety. We're going to fund our schools. The average school is going to have about a 4 to 8% cut.
Okay.
You know, people out there watching have had their salaries, or people who have a small business. A lot of people have seen a 5% cut or 6%
their job
cut,
eliminated.
Or their job eliminated. If school districts can't live with a 5 to 6% cut on average, then they have a problem managing their district. We're cutting back agencies. We're cutting back commissions. You know, it's interesting. Everyone comes to finance to testify, and they all say the same thing. Senators, we know you have a hard job. Some of them even say, we're praying for you. But you really can't cut us. And I'll give you the example. The Historic Commission. We're cutting the Historic Commission probably by 80%. And we had an hour testimony from well-intentioned people from small counties around the state who came in and said, you can't cut the Historic Commission because we love our courthouse and it needs to be restored and it needs to be repaired. I love history. I love small-town Texas.
Who doesn't?
But you have to set priorities. And so restoring the courthouse is going to have to wait a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Every dollar in the budget has a constituency, and I respect that. But you must prioritize. That's what they have to do at the federal level, and we have to do it here in Texas.
Interesting how you say that. Every dollar has a constituency.
Absolutely.
That's basically the way our government spending system is set up. And speaking of managing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to tell you a great story. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just thought of this. There was as I walked in the Capitol this morning, there was a man on the steps with a couple of, and he recognized me, and he said, "You're Senator Patrick." I said, "Yes." He said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "I have a child who's disabled," and I was immediately expecting what I hear from everyone, and I've been on the board of a charity that works with disabled children for 22 years, so I'm very tied into that community, and we're not going to cut programs for the disabled, but he said, "Dan, what's most important to me is not if you cut a program for my son. What's most important to me is you keep the economy strong so I have a job. Because the most important financial support for my son is me working." And we have to keep remembering that. We cannot do anything to damage the economy. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought it was a great moment, really. And you come back to, we have to protect jobs.
It's good for our listeners to hear that, because you hear so much of the mean-spirited, scatological diatribe, but yet that's the type of thing that would keep you going. I was just going to say, speaking of managing our time, you've been good enough to come over to visit with us.
Sure.
You've got plenty of committees to serve on. Folks, we're going to let Senator Patrick go. So be sure and come back to join us. Visit TexasInsider.org. Senator, thanks a bunch for your work.
And they can find out more at danpatrick.com.
DanPatrick.com.
I'm sorry, danpatrick.org, or on Facebook, it's dan.patrick.texas. So if they're on Facebook, dan.patrick.texas, and we post every day what's going on. They'll have it faster than almost anywhere except with you.
And listening to your radio shows. You're now in San Antonio.
We're in San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston, 4 to 6 in the afternoon. I don't get to do the show very often, but and they can pick that up at ksevradio.com. That's short for 7, ksevradio.com. So we're working hard, trying to get the message out, and that's important. The more informed people are, the better government we will have.
Government goes to those who show up.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your work, folks. Thanks for joining us again for Texas Insider. I'm Jim Cardle.